today we are going to make mushroom risotto. This is one of the favorite things on the menu. I try to take it off and it keeps coming back. So let's go over ingredients. I have a cup and a half of arborio rice. Arborio rice is very wide grain, short grained rice from northern Italy. I've got about, right here, I've got about a cup of minced shallot, but I only need about a half. I've got about a cup of dry white wine, Chablis in this case. I've got about a quarter to a half a cup of vermouth, dry vermouth, salt and pepper, shredded Parmesan cheese. I've got a mix of mushrooms. Now, because we're in COVID, it's a little bit more difficult to get the kinds of mushrooms that I would typically be using. I'd be using chanterelles, enokis, other things like that. In this case, we've got shiitakes, regular button mushrooms, and then some portobellos that have been chopped up. I've got butter, I've got olive oil. Over here, I've got about 7 to 8 cups of chicken stock, house-made chicken stock that has had all the fat removed. And in here, I've got ground up dried porcini mushrooms. This is how I get them in a jar, and then I just put them in a coffee grinder and grind them to a powder. And I use this in a lot of things. If you've ever had the roast tenderloin or anything like that, I season my roast tenderloin with porcini powder. Just kind of gives it a good umami flavor to it. And that's about it. So we're gonna start by sauteing these mushrooms, and then we're gonna put them aside and we'll add them to the risotto at the very end. So I'm just gonna get my pan on. In this case, I'm gonna use butter. Usually we finish things with butter, but when it comes to mushrooms, the mushrooms kind of absorb whatever oil you're cooking it in. They act like a sponge, so we're gonna add something with a little bit better flavor. We're just gonna break these down, cook them a little bit, and add just a touch of salt and pepper to it. That's it. And we'll just toss them as they start to cook, break down, cook some of the water out of them. Okay, I'm gonna set these aside. I'm gonna get a saucepan to start my risotto. Now, anybody that's ever made risotto, you're probably saying, okay, this guy's crazy. But when we make risotto at the restaurant, we make a plain risotto. So we're not adding these kinds of flavors to it until the very end. Just so you know, if you don't like mushrooms, then you could do green peas, you could do the butternut squash, you could pretty much put anything in your risotto that you want to towards the end of it. But the basic risotto recipe is as follows. So we're gonna start with about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. And all I'm gonna do is sweat out my shallots. And sweating is basically like sauteing, but I do not want to start any colorization of the shallots. All you're trying to do is cook them to a transparent state. If you haven't ever made risotto, it can be a little bit tedious because you have to consistently stir the rice as you're making it, but it's worth it in the end. Now I'm going to add my rice. I'm going to stir that in. And get a nice coat of oil, mixing the shallots with it, and we're going to cook it until the grain on the very outer layer of the grain kind of starts to turn transparent. So as we add liquids to the rice now, we're going to stir it and we're going to cook it till almost all of the liquid is gone before we add the next batch of liquid. The rice has absorbed the wine. It's Now we're going to start adding chicken stock. I have an 8-ounce ladle. I think in the recipe I put about 1.5 cups per, but in this case we'll just do 1 cup. Stir it in. Keep stirring. You're taking the starches off of the grain of rice, and you're kind of creating that creamy liquid that's in between the grains. Okay, so through the magic of television and Sid's patience, you haven't had to sit here and watch me add stock and cook it down and add stock and cook it down. The rice still has a definite grain to it, but you can see that the liquid is kind of bubbling like a mud pot or something. The stock that's remaining on the outside of the grain is thickened up with the rice starch. We're very close. Now I'm going to add some of this powdered porcini mushroom. And all that's going to do, I mean, it just adds so much mushroom flavor to it that it just makes the dish. It really does. Add some of our mushrooms. We're going to put a little bit of salt in here because I haven't seasoned my stock. My stock has no salt in it. I'm going to add some Parmesan cheese. Just going to mix that in there. Yep, it's really good. One of my favorite things. Okay, so the risotto's done. You could have added, instead of the mushrooms, you could, like I said, you could have added green peas, you could have added squash, you could have added a number of things, asparagus tips, whatever you want in your risotto. But ultimately, consistency-wise, you're looking for a soft mashed potato kind of consistency. Garnish it with some green onions, some blistered grape tomatoes, whatever you want to do. And there you go. Wild mushroom risotto. Get there.
Is it good?
Real good.
Mikey likes it.